Not only is it Friday, we're dropping the top 4 fantasy NHL young guns in the game that you need to be paying attention to. We're breaking down all of Friday's big-time bets. We made it another week, people. Fantasy hockey dominance, and you're tapped in to your source for fantasy hockey news. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back inside the lab to your source for daily fantasy hockey news. And we got daily degenerate gambling breakdowns. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Roden. And on this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Shout out to all of our everydayers and a sincere thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Steele, I don't know what else to say other than when it comes to these countdowns that you and I do, yeah, okay, we like doing them to hear what you and I say, but there is a lot of value to be found in these lists. And of course, now that we're at the top of our young gun countdown, we're going to break down 4 through 1 on today's episode. And of course, get to Friday's bets. Only 2 games, but I'm really feeling my picks. We're going to tee up the weekend with a big winning night on Friday night. But these young guns, they might not be out there 4 through 1, but maybe they're even more worthwhile over the coming year or two, Steele, as they really come into their games. And I think taking a look at some of them, whether it's via trade or next year's draft, is really going to make your team a winning one. So we're going to talk about some players I know that are near and dear to your heart, Minnesota Wild, and so forth. Right over to you for your number 4. We're going 4 through 1. Our lists have been pretty different, but I really like what we got cooking right now for these young guns. 100 games played in the NHL or less.
Yeah, I love the variety that we have, a couple of different people, but also in different spots on this top 10 list. Let us know out there what you agree with, what you disagree with in these, both of our top 10 lists. Let us know in the comments who you would have in where you would have them in this top 10 list. Before we get to that first, I do want to just mention some big news from the Colorado Avalanche. Gabriel Landeskog has returned to practice. First time he's been on the ice since last May. I don't believe he will be back in the regular season, but there is close to 100% possibility that he'll be back come playoff time for the Avalanche. So keep an eye on that.
Wow.
And that's big news for the Avalanche as they get their captain back after almost 2 years of him out with injury. Big news for Gabriel Landeskog and the Colorado Avalanche. Let's get to the top 10, though. Just a little prerequisite here. We did leave off Connor Bedard and Adam Fantilli on this top 10 list. Otherwise, if we had them on here, they would have been probably the top 2 spots on this list for a lot of people. And
they're on the list, most definitely.
They're definitely most definitely on the list. But we kept them out there. We wanted to talk about a few other players a little bit less talented than those 2 young guns that we have all of our eyes on. At number 4 on my list, Minnesota Wild, right in front of Brock Faber and Marco Rossi for me. I've got Filip Gustavsson of the Minnesota Wild at number 4 on my top 10 list. 88 games played in the NHL, 42, 31, 12 record over the last 3 seasons with the Minnesota Wild and the Ottawa Senators. A career average, .916 save percentage, a 2.62 goals against average. He was absolutely stellar last year, a .933 save percentage. Hasn't been quite the same. Yes, he's also been out of the lineup for the last 2 weeks. For the Minnesota Wild, dealing with a lower body injury. So that's some big news there. But Filip Gustavsson at 26 years old, 25 years old, he's going to be the guy for the Minnesota Wild, in my opinion. I know Jesper Wallstedt is a guy that a goaltender that they really like and could make. Again, he just made his NHL debut in that 7-2 loss against the Dallas Stars. Not a great showing from the Minnesota Wild in front of him. But Filip Gustavsson, when he comes back, I really hope, again, it kind of seemed like the perfect time to get that injury, as he can kind of just take a little bit of rest, regroup, get back focused mentally, and get back to his game from last year. So Filip Gustavsson makes the list at number 4 for me. I just really love his game. I love where he's at right now and what he's trending to be for his NHL future.
This guy has got to be on the list. And the fact that he is almost, he's going to be 26 this summer, and he's only played 88 career regular season games in the NHL is almost a benefit to this guy's game. I feel like now he's extra poised. He's about to really enter his prime, and I think you've covered it nicely. He's a little higher on my list, but I'll just leave it at this. The fact that he has also been able to enter into a situation in Minnesota and learn from Marc-Andre Fleury. You and I have talked a lot about Flower. He's a bit of a polarizing goalie over the last year and a half because he's either on point looking like his former, cup-winning self, or he's all over the ice Ed Belfour style on a couple of rum and cokes. Anyhow, Filip Gustavsson has got to be on this list because number one goaltenders with his poise. I talked about Joseph Woll being almost unflappable at times. Filip Gustavsson has the same kind of moxie. I love me a tall goaltender, 6'2". Lot to like about this guy's game. Lot to like about a bunch of young Minnesota Wild players, and that's where I'm headed next, Steele. You mentioned Marco Rossi. We're going to cover a lot of these same players, so we're going to keep today very, very short and sweet. Marco Rossi at 5'9" tells me this. His hockey IQ and his skill set, the upside is through the roof. There's really no telling what this guy is going to do in terms of his ceiling, but we're already seeing what he can do in terms of what I think is his floor. 24 points through 40 games this year already, Steele. Let's say he stays about on this pace, finishes around, let's say 50 points. I'm fine with that considering where he's at in his career, and I think that right there is his floor, and that's why he's so high up my list because I get it. 5'9". Some of his game, he's got to be smarter with the puck. But when I see his upside, his playmaking skills, and his creativity, you and I don't talk a lot about creativity, but I think at 5'9", it makes sense that this kid has got to be that. And I really, really do think only at 24 points so far, we're going to see a lot more from this kid just explode over the next year and a half. I hope you're liking all of these takes because it's going to mean really, really good things for the Minnesota Wild, who have a number of good young pieces.
Anytime we talk about the Minnesota Wild, there's a smile on my face ear to ear. So absolutely love this pick at number 4 for you, Marco Rossi. I talked about him at number 5 and Filip Gustavsson at number 4 for me. At number 3, though, this is a player that I talked about 2 seasons ago. Sort of overlooked him because he's been injured, but Jack Quinn of the Buffalo Sabres needs to be mentioned, in my opinion. Suffered an Achilles injury back in June, so he's been out for 6 months. He did return on December 19th for the Buffalo Sabres. He's only played 9 games so far, but he's got 4 goals, 5 points so far in 9 games. Total NHL career, though, 86 games for 44 points. He's been absolutely killing it as a young gun. Number 8 overall pick back in 2020. And again, like I said, I talked about him 2 seasons ago in our preseason draft. So, as one of those late round draft picks for fantasy leagues. And at the time, again, first couple of weeks into that season, he wasn't really panning out the way I hoped. So I dropped him, started to play good, but finished with 37 points in 75 games in that rookie year. In my opinion, this kid is going to be a prolific goal scorer in the NHL. He is going to be a problem for many teams. An unbelievable shot, great hockey IQ. Just watching some of his highlights, goalies don't know what he's going to do with the puck, whether he's going to shoot or if he's going to fake it and deke him out, or if he's going to make an unbelievable pass to one of his wingers. Great hesitations and faking goaltenders out. He's got great patience with the puck. And again, just an unbelievable shot. So along with some of those other guys like Tage Thompson, who's got an unbelievable shot as well, I think Jack Quinn's going to be a weapon on the power play on the opposite side of him, because that's where he tends to be on the power play. And Jack Quinn, just again, at 21 years old, just seems to be, in my opinion, his ceiling is going to be a prolific goal scorer in the NHL, and he seems to be on his way to do so.
Former 50-goal scorer in junior. Obviously, that shot is one of those tools in his box that is up there, that is lethal. I think he could fill out his frame a little bit. I know he's 6 foot, but throw in a couple of pounds, maybe establish that physical presence a little bit more. I think that comes with reps. I think that comes with confidence. I don't know if I'd have him this high on the list. I didn't even have him on my list. I don't think this is wrong. I'm not going to come at you because there could be so many players on this list. I'll just say this. Shout out to Kevin Adams in Buffalo, establishing himself as you and I have been all over Billy G lately. Shout out to Kevin Adams because this Buffalo Sabres team has a deck stocked with good young pieces. Let's talk about a few more good young pieces right around the break, Steele. Of course, big-time bets Friday night. Only 2 games, but we got you covered. Today's episode, though, my friends, is brought to you by Sleeper. It's almost the halfway point in the NHL season. Fans of all NHL teams need to get tapped into your team's performance, highs and lows, regardless of where you are in the current standings. We need to remind you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is Steele and I's number one choice for daily fantasy sports, especially, of course, daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. This is where you need to get in on the loot. You can play daily fantasy on NFL, NBA, MLB, CFB, all of it on Sleeper. Steele and I are in that group chat, chirping each other, chirping other fans. You got to connect with those top bets. Entries can be made in under a minute to win $100 times your money on Sleeper. Just correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me. Win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Locational availability as well.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you go to YouTube, check out Locked On Sports today. They've launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's been up for over a month now, so make sure you go over there and subscribe because they're here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. So make sure you go over there, subscribe to the Locked On Sports today on YouTube, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, and the 5-star review. I've got 2 more players, the top 2 on my top 10 list. But Flip, yes, who comes in at number 3 for you?
Look, much like I appreciate you sticking to your guns on Quinn, and I know you don't, I don't think you have, because it sounds like you don't, have my boy Pyotr Kochetkov on this list. And I understand this is going to be a polarizing pick, but this is the emphasis I place on goaltenders. And this guy is, if not already, the number 1 goaltender for a good Carolina Hurricanes squad. I love Rod Brind'Amour. I love the blue line. This is going to be a player that is going to be a number 1 goaltender now for a number of years in Carolina. I was worried about his ability to adjust to the NHL game.
Yeah.
He's been a little bit inconsistent. At times, he looks like, well, why hasn't he been up here for the last couple of seasons? And then other times it looks like we understand why. But then when you dig into his numbers, he has mastered the AHL game. He's mastered wherever he's played. And he is ready to get it done at the NHL level. 24 years old. Only 49 career games played in the NHL, 26, 14, and 8 record, 5 shutout steal, 906 save percentage, 2.46 goals against. Perhaps some of those numbers are propped up by the good blue line in Carolina. I got to throw that out there. But he is one of those netminders that I've had my eye on. I recently traded him for a very good piece in Vincent Trocheck. I think I won that trade so far. Trocheck's been going off. But I'll say this. Not many young number 1 goaltenders that you look and see have a good setup to just be that guy. Kochetkov is set up nicely to be that guy. And for that main reason, aside from the numbers that I'm looking at, he makes up high on my list because of the value I personally place on good goaltending.
And you know what? You're probably right. Kochetkov should have been on my top 10 list.
It's high. I get it. It's
probably should have been at number 8 where I had or number 9 where I had Connor Ingram. So I definitely should have had Kochetkov. He's been absolutely stellar as of late. But like you said, it's more of the inconsistency that I've seen over the last
4 straight wins.
Yeah, 4 straight wins. But over the last 2 months, again, just a little bit of inconsistency for me. But definitely should have been on the top 10. At number 2, I have someone that you talked about at number 8. Kirril Marchenko of the Columbus Blue Jackets. And just like what you said a few episodes ago, we need to mention at least one young gun on the Blue Jackets. And when he has 34 goals, 47 points in 99 games, definitely deserves our attention and deserves your attention too. Just to kind of reel back a little bit, Jack Quinn only at 4%. Like I said, he's only at 9, only played 9 games this year. Kirril Marchenko at 11%. Rostered on Yahoo right now. He has slowed down the last 5 to 10 games, only 1 point in that time, but he is on pace to double his points from last year, just over 50 plus points that he's on pace for this season. Shooting the puck a lot more. He's showing us a lot of his skill this year too. that through the legs bar down goal against the Buffalo Sabres.
Disgusting.
And that hat trick was just absolutely gross.
Yeah.
What a play by him.
Yeah.
And again, just really showing us what he can do with and without the puck, getting open and getting the pucks on net. And just looking at this Columbus Blue Jackets team, they have to be the youngest NHL team right now in the NHL. 18 players are 26 years old or younger, and 2 of them are on the IR. I just want to name a couple of them because it's absolutely absurd. Jack Roslovic, Alexander Texier, Matthew Oliver, Adam Fantilli, Kent Johnson, Kirril Marchenko, Cole Sillinger, Dmitry Voronkov, Yegor Chinnikov, and then
they're all hurt.
Those guys. The only guys that are on the IR that are 26 or younger are Patrick Laine and Zach Werenski. But 18 players on this roster, 2 of them on the IR, are 26 years old or younger. They've got a bright future ahead of them if they can be fully healthy. We know they struggle with injuries, but here's along the line is that with Marchenko and some of these young guys, this team needs to find a way to stay healthy. And both Johnny Gaudreau and Patrick Laine need to find a way to get back to superstar status. Just want to talk about Gaudreau for just a second. He went from 115 points to 74 points, and now he's on pace for 48 points. That is not even close to being worth nearly $10 million is what he's almost being paid. Johnny Gaudreau needs to be a lot better because he needs to be the veteran and be a leader for all these young guys that he's leading the way for. When you're making that much money and you've got the talent that he has, and we know he does, you've got to be a veteran. You've got to be a veteran presence and really lead this young team. But Kirril Marchenko is one of those guys that, like you said the other day, he's about ready to explode. Probably not for this season, but maybe at the beginning of next year.
You can't help but have a look at that kid and his offensive upside. I don't know about what he's going to be able to do about rounding out his game, which is a lot of the conversations we've had about a number of the players on this list for obvious reasons. They've only played 100 or less games in the NHL. But his ability to score goals already in a very flashy manner and to look confident doing it on a bad team as well, Marchenko's double circled for me because obviously he's not going to be a guy that fills out peripherals, but he might be one of those guys that scores 40 goals in 35 games or something like that. Sidebar, Johnny Gaudreau, that's an embarrassment, and nobody's talking very much about. Everyone was all over the Calgary Flames when they lost Tkachuk and Gaudreau. Not many people talking about right now how maybe Calgary got lucky with the second piece of those moves. Obviously, Tkachuk, let's not go there, but Gaudreau, they got lucky there because clearly this guy is a shell of his former self. Anyhow, very quickly, all I got to say is at number 2, it's Filip Gustavsson, and we've covered it all. This guy is a bona fide number 1 starter. And 10-9-2 this year. Okay, still a .903 save percentage. And that to me is most indicative of what this goaltender can do because in his career, 88 games played in the NHL, .916 save percentage. That tells me he's the real deal. That's really all I need to know, especially when you watch him. Speaking of poise, this guy's got it already. As the Minnesota Wild improve, this guy will move up that draft board in terms of being a legitimate top 10 goalie that comes off the board. And as Minnie gets better, don't be surprised if he creeps his way up into that echelon of maybe not 1A, but 1B goaltenders. I could see it still. You're going to see our bets right around the break. And our top guy, we both have the same one, Big Bruisin' D-Man in New Jersey, of course.
Yeah, exactly. You probably already saw it if you're watching the YouTube channel. We'll get to big time bets very, very soon. And then we'll get to our number 1 player, number 1 young gun on the top 10 list. But first, this episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. I know we gravitate towards sports to escape from some of the crazy realities we have going on in our lives, but let's take a minute and talk about preparing for real life emergencies. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. That's absolutely terrifying. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if my boy Flip over there or one of my family members got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from life-saving medication that they needed. Thankfully, we'll all be okay thanks to Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among many others. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use Locked On to get $20 off your order. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, and leave a 5-star review. Leave comments on the YouTube channel if you agree or disagree with this top 10 list. Who would you have in it? Who would you take out? And where would you put them in this top 10? We really do appreciate all the comments, the conversations, and the dialogue we have with our listeners out there. Number one, though, before we get to big time bets, number one on the list, we both have it. Luke Hughes of the New Jersey Devils has to be there, has to be at this number one spot, and to be at this number one spot for everyone that we've talked about so far. I don't really have much to say on this because the kid's dangerous. He's absolutely dangerous for this New Jersey Devils blue line. Only at 20 years old right now, 25 points in 40 NHL career games so far. And if he is anything, which he probably is, but if he's anything like Quinn Hughes and Jack Hughes, you know this guy's going to be a bona fide superstar in this league in maybe a year or two. And especially playing with his brother Jack Hughes in New Jersey is got to be one of the best feelings ever, just being able to play with your brother in the NHL. So kudos to him. Kudos to the New Jersey Devils drafting this guy because he's been an absolute stud so far. And at 20 years old, again, just getting it done with, I would really like to see him play with Dougie Hamilton, but he's out of injury. He's probably gone for the rest of the season, but he's taking over that power play for them.
Well, here it is, Steele. And look, I think there's something to be said about perhaps this New Jersey Devils team. It's underachieving and it's been banged up in very serious spots, not to mention the goaltending struggling. So the fact that a young defenseman in Luke Hughes is still able to be as good and effective as he has been and putting up points, like I know 23 points doesn't exactly like jump off the page, but maybe it should for a 20-year-old rear guard because this team is not even performing close to what it should be. Dougie Hamilton out. He has to be more of a responsible blue liner, eating more minutes. Yeah, okay, he's able to do that. But at 20 years old, you want to see this guy develop. He's been thrown to the wolves and have to really step up as their number one blue liner. And he has taken the reins. This kid is impressive. Edge work, phenomenal. Great skater. I would like to see, speaking of filling out frame, I would like to see him tack on maybe 10 or 15 pounds and really just dominate the league. Imagine this kid throws on 10 or 15 pounds of muscle steel. He's going to be deadly and hard to stop. If you aren't buying into what the New Jersey Devils are doing just yet, because last year, this is another point when we had to look at this, everyone was throwing, including me, this is the best team in the Metro, Stanley Cup threat. Last year, maybe. But the goaltending isn't there, Steele. Dougie Hamilton being hurt, it's not there. And they have been banged up front. And they're struggling in the standings. So right now, they're not there. But boy, you can't help but feel in a year or two, maybe with a goaltender, and they're still in it in the Metro, 4 points out of the third. You can't help but feel, though, this team is on a come up in the biggest of ways. And that's why getting a piece of guys like Luke Hughes, who will be at the center of that, that's how you build a winner year to year, especially in, I'll say it again, keeper dynasty, Steele. I got to say it. That's how you build a winner. But let's build some winning bets right now.
That's what we do over here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast at every end of the episodes. Big time bets where the money is made. Only 2 games on the schedule for Friday night. Dallas Stars taking on the Nashville Predators and my Minnesota Wild taking on the Philadelphia Flyers. I've got 2 picks from the same game, obviously.
Okay.
Stars on the money line. That's going to be my lock of the night.
Love
They're
it.
6-3-1 in their last 10 games on a 2-game win streak.
Sure.
I look back to that last game they played against the Nashville Predators where they scored 2 goals in the last 15 seconds and absolutely just defeated them. Looked absolutely crushed, but I like the Dallas Stars right now, and it goes along with my second pick. Robertson, anytime goal. He's on a 3-game goal streak, 4 in his last 5 games. So I really like what I'm seeing from him. I would like to see a little bit more, maybe some multi-point games, but
Sure.
I'll take the goals right now because he's on my fantasy keeper team and just want to get him going a little bit more, but the goals are coming right now.
I appreciate the plug for your keeper team. I'm loving that. I got a same game parlay, so if you want me to just fire off all 3, I can bang it up quick because I think you're going to like it. Minnesota Wild at home against the Philadelphia Flyers. You know, the Flyers got a big win with Drysdale in the lineup. Maybe that energy is going to start to cook for them. The Flyers are 1-4 in their last 5 on the road, 2-4 in their last 6 against Mini. And I have a same game parlay that I think you're going to like. Minnesota Wild on the money line, number 1.
Yes,
number
sir.
2, under 6.5. It's 5-5 head to head, but I can't help but feel that this one has all the makings of one going under the number. Mini just got pumped. Philly's not playing well. I like the under here in a big, big way. And lock of the night, Matt Boldy, anytime point. Matt Boldy has been a lot better over the last few games. 3 goals, 2 assists in his last 3. Loving the Matt Boldy anytime point. Parlay all 3 of those together. I'm really, really liking that same game parlay, Steele.
That goes with my final pick of the night as well. Wild on the money line in this one. They do need a really big win. Just trying to stay at a 500% team right now. 17, 19, and 4 on the season. They do have a couple of games in hand on a few teams, but if they keep losing games like this, I know they're without Gustavsson and Kaprizov, but if they keep losing games, it's going to be very tough in the second half of the season to catch up to some of these teams like the Oilers and Kraken, who are on 7 and 8 game win streak. So this is a big one, a big win that they need to get at home. And again, I also agree with the under 6.5 in this matchup. Carter Hart's been playing really good. Urson's been playing good for them as well. Yeah. And then getting Marc-Andre Fleury back in that crease instead of Wallstead, who just made his NHL debut, is going to be big for them. They know they played a bad game. They need to really be strong in front of their goaltender this time. And they need, again, a big 2 points in this home game against the Philadelphia Flyers. Those are the 3 picks and the locks of the night for Friday night. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. And once again, go check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. They're here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. They've been on there for over a month now. Go check it out and subscribe. And again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again on Monday.
Peace.